Okay, looks like the recording is good. Hello, listeners and viewers of YouTube, and welcome to my review of the visual novel Saya No Uta, or as known in English, Sound of Saya. To introduce myself, my name is Aiden, and this is posted on the Aiden Read Stuff channel, which is a channel where I do readings of visual novels, primarily first time readings, where I read them out loud and then give my reactions and thoughts to it at the same time. And we have concluded, or I have concluded, my first novel, which is Saya No Uta. So I decided for every visual novel I finish, I'd give a review slash discussion. I'd say it's more a discussion because it's not formatted as nicely as a review, since I'm really bad at reading my own writing out loud for some reason. So I just wrote down a bunch of like little points that I would discuss over and just give my final thoughts on the game or novel, because I did really enjoy it. Um, yeah, so if you do want to check out me reading Say No Uta, it is on my channel. Sadly, since it's my first video recordings, the first couple sessions of reading, my microphone volume, my microphone quality was pretty bad. Like the first two episodes was horrible, and couple next episodes you could hear it, but my voice was very compressed. And I know this mic isn't that good, but it's a lot better than what I was using before. But yeah, let's just get right into the review. It's there if you want to see it, but let's talk about it. So this is, so like I said, this is a review on Saya No Uta, produced by Nitro Plus Studios. I don't have too much experience in visual novels. I've read about like 20, I'll just say 25. I don't have the exact number on me before reading this. And the only Nitro Plus novel I've read was Fenomeno, or Phenomenon. I think it was Fenomeno though, which wasn't really a visual novel. It was more of a kind of a preview for a light novel series that they made to advertise it. But that was super good. So, and I thought it was pretty good. So I had like, obviously it's just a producer, not the author, but I had like a little expectation for this. And the author's name is, I have it here, why didn't I put it on my notes? Gan Urobuchi. That's probably not how you say his name. Who has written actually some familiar things I have watched slash read, and I didn't know it at the time of reading the novel, like Fate Zero, which is, the prequel for Fate Stay Night, obviously written by a different author, which I really did enjoy back when I first watched it in 2012. It was a while ago, and obviously his most popular series was probably Madoka Magica, which is another dark, gritty stuff. And he also did Psychopass, which was also another thing I liked. So he's done a lot of works I have liked. I see a couple of works that I didn't like, but I won't mention those. So he's a very good author. So that makes sense why I think this novel is really good. So in this discussion, I am going to be talking about the story, characters, art, and music and sound, and then giving my final rating on it. It'll mostly be about the story and characters, since I'm not an artist, or I don't really know much about music and sound, so I can't really give a good commentary on that. But for the story itself, I myself am a very big horror fan, and I haven't really read a horror visual novel before. Like, I've read The House in Fata Morgana and Umineko, two of my favorite visual novels, which had a horror feeling to it. I mean, I guess Umineko was kind of a horror, at least for the first episode, but it was more light horror, right? Not a real horror novel. So this was my first one, and I was really impressed with it. I think they did the atmosphere very good. Fuminori's vision was terrifying. And I just love, I know this sounds kind of weird, but I love stories where a major character's mind breaks and you get to see like his deluded self, which is literally Fuminori. And I've always enjoyed that like psychological thing. Obviously, Fuminori actually had a physical damage done to his brain from the brain surgery, but the same process applies because of that brain damage, it also affected his psyche. Even though he seemed like, even at closer to the end, I was kind of feeling like Fuminori's got control of himself, but really, it just looks like that from his point of view. When you look at like it from Koji's, he's completely nuts, right? So I love that kind of stuff. Obviously, the author goes into that more in like Psychopaths, which like again made sense. So I'm a very big fan of that. Um, I thought his I thought the story had really good pacing. Like it was a pretty good length. I think for horror stories you don't really want to drag them out as much because the emotion of fear gradually lessens the longer the topic goes on. So if this story was another like 5 hours or something, like even going through it right now, you definitely like get desensitized to the monsters. Like the first hour of watching through Fuminori is definitely the most impactful, but because of the pacing and keeping tense moments combined with music, sound effects, and just the scenarios and like throwing in some exposition and story into it to like fill in pieces of the puzzles, the pacing came out really nice, and it kept my attention grabbed pretty much throughout the whole story. I think I was entertained the majority of the time, so that's a plus. Okay, the final fight scene. I I loved it. I love the final confrontation between um, Koji and Fuminori for both endings, 2 and 3 throughout, even though both like start the same and obviously end a little differently. Just like from pretty much from like when Koji gets out of his car to like the death battle with his freaking rusty steel pipe and Fuminori's axe. It was so crazy and intense. And it's so like you don't expect something like that from a visual novel that's always really, really like tense and atmospheric and very good at keeping you aware and scared to just like go crazy. But because of how odd it is, it really made the story, it really worked. Like I was enjoying it so much, especially with the song playing, which we'll get to later. But it's really cool. It kind of reminds me of from Fate, the Heavens Feel route with the fist fight from Shiro and Kotomine, just because it seems so out of place with all the magic and swords where they're just having a fist fight. That's what it felt to me. Some like just crazy like savagery, just one on one. It was. I think that was a big plus for me. It's like the story probably didn't need it, but it really helped and set up a good climax. Okay, so the story was an eroge, which means it had set scenes. I like to categorize visual novels as no set scenes, but they're not like the story does not revolve around the set scenes, and then there's visual novels you literally just buy because 60 or 70% of it is set scenes. This is obviously the second category. I think the so I think the question is, were the set scenes necessary? Obviously, I'm guessing the author kind of needed to put them in, or maybe he wanted to, but it does sort of seem out of place a bit. But I actually do think they fit well into the novel. Because usually when I see them, I don't, but I think they all serve their place. Like the first couple scenes with Seiya and Fuminori. Also, that's a train in the background if you haven't seen any of my videos. Sadly, when I record, I'm near the train track, so you'll hear them now and then. But I closed my window, so hopefully it won't bother you too much. But yeah, the first couple scenes just shows how desperate Fuminori is and how much he depends on Saya, so I thought that was very good. And then obviously you have the one with the neighbor guy. Totally forgot his name, which kind of showed that Saya's not a all-powerful monster, that she got overpowered by a crazy neighbor guy, which I was surprised. I thought she was just acting, but it shows like a powerless side. It also showed that it affected both of their psyches, and it helped Fuminori grow into a not so nice person, kind of determined to turn into a monster. So that was important. The Yo stuff just made me it kind of makes you see how Fuminori progressed as a person. Now he's like just full I don't want to say evil. It's not a good word. He's embraced his monstrous self, right? And it kind of shows how Saya, while she does have the mind of a young lady, she's also like extremely smart, and she does not care about anyone but Fuminori. And you see that a lot. So I do think the set scenes were fine. On a level of arousing, none of them really clicked with me, right? Because in my first couple readings with the first scenes, I just kept thinking that Saya was a monster. Before they confirmed it, I'm like, I just kept thinking like, oh, what if they revert the image and show like him making love to like a blob of meat? So that wasn't really appealing to me. And obviously the neighbor forced sexual intercourse scene wasn't my cup of tea either. And whenever I just seen Yo scenes, I just got sad because I feel so bad for Yo. Yo's life was pure suffering in this novel. When I look back into it, I just always felt bad for her. And now I'll talk about the endings. There's 3 endings. The first ending, where it pretty much ends halfway through the game. I actually do enjoy the ending. Obviously, I guess it would be considered the worst ending, but that's just because there has to be. I mean, not worst as in makes you feel bad, just worst written, I guess. It's no one's favorite ending, is what I'm saying. But I enjoyed it because it's the one ending where Fuminori keeps his humanity. Like, he doesn't turn into this monstrous guy. Sure, he's locked up for all eternity, but at least he's back to normal, kind of. Obviously, he's still obsessing over Saya, but he doesn't go down this path which makes him look horrible. And obviously it sucks for Saya because it's very open-ended. After you get the information from the second ending about how Saya's, or the hypothesis from Professor Ogai about Saya's reproductive needs, it's pretty open to if Saya ever found a second partner, because she needs to feel love to breed. So maybe the end of the world happened, or it didn't, or maybe she died. It's just a very loose-ended ending that doesn't really answer much. But at least Yo lives and Koji lives fine, which makes me happy. And again, Fuminori and Sai, the Fuminori and Sai scene where they were talking over the phone texts was really sweet. But yeah, it was an alright ending. Obviously, no one would like it if it was the final ending because, again, too many open ends. But I appreciate it. I feel like people. Well, I haven't really looked too much into it, but I don't think a lot of people like it. But it's an alright ending. So now the last two endings, which are really big. The second ending with Saya and Fuminori, I guess winning, quote unquote winning, where they beat Koji, kill him, and send him, and then basically infect the Earth with her seed spore things and transform it into a fleshy planet, ending her life. It was a very interesting moment. I obviously caught the feels when Saya was dying while giving birth. It was a very beautiful scene, very beautiful CG. Um, Even though I primarily was rooting for Koji's team, just because I don't really like the two as like I like them as characters. I think they're well written, but like just emotionally, I don't like them because they're being pretty horrible and they destroyed the planet, which is not good with me. Obviously, I don't like that whole thing, but I think as a love story, you call this. It's a pretty sweet ending. It's kind of like a scenario where it's like a couple facing the world that won't accept them, so they destroy the world. You kind of seen it in a couple things. It's just like it's just a really crazy ending. Like because it's not like the whole world was against him. Like they might have been if they found out about it, but immediately they weren't against him. So that would and yeah, it's just hard to get my feelings through it. Um, yeah, because it also brings up the topic of how much of because it brings up Odai's hypothesis that Saya was made to infect the planet, but then her reproductive urges got temporarily stopped because after learning about love through human butts or through reproduction through human butts, she decided that she needed love before she can reproduce. And it kind of brings into the argument of how much how, did Saya really infect the planet for Fuminori, or was it just because she gained back her reproductive needs? Because obviously it does immediately seem like she did it for Fuminori, but when I think about it more, like because Fuminori's gonna see the planet normal, but he's gonna get infected eventually, right? And the infected, we don't know about the infected species altogether, but I think it's safe to assume that their minds will change and stuff. So like he probably won't even be Fuminori anymore. So like was it really for him or was it just because he finally like realized that this is your purpose in life? So that's also something about it. But I'm not saying this is a bad ending at all. This is more my emotions again. I think it was really well written. Leaves you at leaves some open ended thoughts to it about what happened. Like it doesn't even go back to Fuminori. It kind of just cuts to Ryoko seen through the apocalypse and her transforming. I do have to say though, how it ended off with Ryoko's little like smirky line about I'm not worried about if I can think right or whatever. I'm just wondering if I can still be able to taste booze. Like that was so cheesy. I don't know, that broke all the tension for me. I thought that was pretty lame, but it was a great ending. Just that line. That line killed me. Then we have the third ending where I was predicting obviously having that grand ending with Saya destroying humanity. This would definitely be a win for humanity. And it was. It was so emotional, dude. If you've seen the last episode, I almost cried when everyone just started dying because like then Ryoko, Saya, and Fuminori all died within like 5-10 minutes of reading. And it was so good. Again, you have the awesome fight scene, but it ends differently with freaking Ryoko popping out of nowhere with her liquid nitrogen bomb. It caught me off guard. I thought she was trying to throw acid, but it was nitrogen. I don't know if it made a difference. It probably did. Nitrogen was probably smarter. But yeah, that was, like I said, I love the fight scene, and that just made it 100 times more intense. Ryoko died like a badass. But I was cheering for Koji, but Fuminori's death was so sad. Like just when they show the CG of his blank face, actually killed me. I was like, no, it hurt because even though I wanted Koji to win, it's just like, and even though they're kind of the villains of the story, you still like spent hours with them. And again, I didn't hate their relationship. I thought it was pretty cute. I just thought that they did bad things because, well, it was in kind of Saya's nature as a being who thought beyond humans, I guess. How you say it, like she learned her emotions from humans, but she could think beyond that. And Fuminori again had a broken psyche because of his brain damage thing. So yeah, they were a tragic couple, and Fuminori's death was really sad. And then you follow it up with Saya's death, which also terrified me. Koji like whacking her while she's slowly crawling to Fuminori. And it's weird because throughout the whole story I always just pictured Saya as a meat monster. Like even when she appeared as a little girl, I just thought of her as a meat monster. That's just how I thought. When she was dying, I actually thought of her in her girl form, and it just hurts, man. It was definitely the most emotional point in the story for me. And the ending with Koji being crazy, I guess. I mean, I guess the whole experience just broke Koji's character. It was also really good. Seeing the nightmare and everything was super intense. It was definitely my favorite ending. But again, I guess that depends. I guess your favorite ending would depend on how much you liked Saya and Fuminori. Because if they were your favorite characters, obviously you'd like the second ending. And since I really liked Koji and the human team, I was voting for them. But that ending was so crazy. I actually thought exploring Koji's madness after wasn't nearly as powerful as the climax. Like that, again, I can't express how good that climax was. From being action-packed to almost bringing me to tears. So that's a huge plus. But yeah, ending 3 was my favorite ending. I'm sure a lot of people liked ending 2. I don't think anyone would choose ending 1. But who knows, maybe there's an oddball there. So all in all, I thought the story was great. I didn't really have any problems with it. Like maybe some of the set scenes I didn't exactly enjoy, but I didn't think they were also unnecessary. They were probably good enough. So let's get to characters. We have our main cast. Fuminori, we pretty much talked about him, right? Broken mind, both physically and mentally. I give him a lot of slack in my readings. Because like I said, it's like I forget that he's damaged sometimes when he's doing those horrible things. Especially post killing the neighbor. I think it's mainly when him and Saya turn turn Yo into the meat monster, and into a set slave slash pet, that just it's not needed, right? You kind of give them some slack, or you kind of like understand them killing people to eat, because if you live in a world where everything's distressing and that's the only appetizing thing, then it sort of makes sense. But there's just no point in doing that to Yo. Like, you already have intercourse with Saya every night. Do you really need that with Yo? But yeah, I think he's a good main character. He's obviously the villain in the story. It'd be weird to think if you think he's a hero, because he's not. I guess he's a hero to Saya. He's a personal hero to Saya. But yeah, I think he's a very interesting character. Saya, again, I think Saya's a great character. I loved learning about her because she's so mysterious, because obviously she seems like the cute, lovable thing. But when you go into Ogai's notes, you can see that she's super smart, but how she was just a living thing and eventually learned everything about humanity in like a couple of months through Odai. So she's a oiled machine that kind of has a persona of a girl. So it kind of brings into question whether she's this cute girl Saya, or is she just the programmed organism Saya. Two sides. But I like her. I like her devilish side. I think she's pretty. Her mannerisms were pretty cute. I love the way she said like Fuminori when like everyone else just calls him Fuminori. I don't know why. It always just rung into my head. But yeah, Saya's good. I don't really have gripes with any major character. Like there's Koji, who's kind of the guy who wants to do everything right, who wants to save his friend. A very caring guy. Obviously, it makes me sad when he breaks, even when he sees a Yo and goes berserk on her, and then Fuminori. He's just like such a likable guy, because everyone else kind of has their demons. Like not only Fuminori and Saya, but like Ryoko and even Yo, post monster form. But yeah, Koji's like obviously you would consider him the hero of the story, I feel. And I just really liked him. Ryoko's a really complex character. She's definitely broken throughout her years of hunting Odai and stuff. But she's gone insane. I really wish we got a little more to her, because we don't actually know what Odai did to make her go insane, or the whole hospital thing. We didn't get that explained completely, because I guess he was trying to put his research papers of Saya into a scientific discovery. But it was clear that Ryoko didn't know about Saya at all, really, until she read the files. So I assume it's for something else. It's clear that Odai was very into the occult stuff, and it sounded like he was trying to summon something. So maybe he was killing people or something, but I just wish we got a little more to her, story. But again, she's crazy. She's more of an anti-hero. Just she's pretty cruel. Again, she ended as a badass, somehow firing her gun with an axe halfway through her body, which is damn, she's so cool. But then you're like, no, you just killed Saya. But she's a force to be reckoned with, for sure. I'm sure she's some people's favorite characters. She's a little too chaotic for me, but she's definitely the badass of the story. And then we have Yo. Like I said before, Yo, I just felt bad for Yo the whole time through this story. Yo was just never happy. You got introduced to her and she's having problems because she loves Fuminori, but Fuminori is really ignoring them obviously because of his disease, but nobody knows that. And then, she's just distressed by a human, and then she gets baited by Saya and transformed into a monster, which apparently took hours, and she sounded like she was in so much pain when she told Koji. So she did not have a fun life. And, she kind of filled the character, like, the kind of kind, like a super kind character, and it just sucks that that happened to her. Being, like, broken like that. Well, I did say I like mind-breaking stories, but still, it's rough. Yo's just sadness incarnated. But yeah, I think those are the main cast. Obviously, there's some other people like Old Guy, but all we have are notes of him, not real character, like character knowledge of him. So I don't really want to comment on him. He's just an expose machine. And we had Omi who like died in like the first quarter of the game. I mean, she seemed like a nice person, very, very I don't know the word for it. I guess she was like the strong woman kind of person who had a very loud opinion on things, which got her killed eventually. I liked her though. I mean, I can't really comment on a character that only lasted, like barely lasted through the game. But I thought her death scene, which I think gets drowned out because it's one of the very first scenes, and like a bunch of horrible stuff happens after. But her scene was very terrifying because it's the first time you actually see Saya kill. Like you kind of have an idea that she's killing humans. Like I even think I called it in one of my stuffed audio videos. But yeah, it was terrifying. And the scene after that where Fuminori's committing accidental cannibalism was super creepy. I think that's the first time I actually got like legitimately scared in the novel. Just looking at that scene, it was horrifying. So props to Omi for creating that scene, and that's a dodge. Someone will take care of that. Anything else? I mean, going back to story because I kind of missed it. So I was talking about general stuff, more specific stuff that's not the fighter Omi scene. And this another climactic scene is the whole thing with the neighbor, which again is crazy. It gets overshadowed by the final fight scene, but when Fuminori pops in through the house and chops him to death, that was also insane. Just gotta give my appreciation to that. Not much else to say. So we did story and characters. We have art. Okay, I'm not an artist, and I'm pretty loose on art. I think art is completely subjective and personal. So like, if I hate something, I know some people would love it. Kind of like with Umineko, I'll use that as an example since it has like 3 different sprites. And I personally really dislike the first generation sprites, and I know people love them to death. So it's just more taste. For my opinions, I think the character art's pretty good. I don't think it's anything special. There's definitely a more mature look to all the characters except for Saya. They give them smaller eyes, which is usually used for mature looks on all of the characters, even Yo, I think. But I might be wrong on Yo, but like Omi, Koji, Fuminori all had smaller eyes. They looked okay. At first I thought Koji looked a little weird, but I got used to him. He looked a lot older than he should, but he's just buff. Saya looks adorable, obviously. We never did get to see her true form, but she's cute. And she has big eyes, to counteract the mature part. I do dislike those 2 pieces of her hair on the opposite sides of her head that kind of look like cat ears. I think that's used for to kind of like relate Saya to a cat. Just you can kind of see like their personalities are alike, you know, being super clingy to Fuminori while still exploring and hunting stuff. But yeah, I just like cat ear things. It's kind of funny because on my other visual novel I'm reading, Fault Milestone One, another main character has the cat hair ears things. But I'm not a fan of that. But it's not a big deal. Um, but I think the main thing when you're looking at art in this game isn't the human sprites. It's the gory stuff. This game does. In Fuminori's vision, the art is amazing. Personally, again, art is personal, but I just love it so much. The backgrounds, insane, covered with flesh. The monsters, obviously, well, not obviously. When I compare like gory horror stuff, I usually compare it to Ito Junji, a very prolific horror manga artist. And some of the monsters here are very creative. Again, more. This is not like Ito Junji. I think it's more Lovecraftian. It's definitely more Lovecraftian than Ito Junji. But yeah, some of the monsters are amazing. Especially in the first introduction of the game when you see Fuminori talking with the monsters on the table. They look so good. And again, they kind of show it at the beginning and show less and less of them. Just because, you know, again, like I said with horror stories, the more you show it, the less scary it gets. But they're pretty consistent on the backgrounds. And the backgrounds are so good. Especially when you have like someone else with Fuminori who sees the background as normal. Just comparing the two is so much fun. So definitely big props on that. It's beautiful. Beautifully gory and scary. But beautiful nevertheless. What else is there? The CGs are good. I love the the ones where like there's a couple of them where the characters are swinging. It's like swinging their weapon. Like there's the first one with Fuminori like chopping up Mr. Neighbor guy. And then you have a similar one where Koji's beating Yo to death with his rusty pipe. Those were super cool. I really loved them. Yeah, the CGs were good. I'm generally pleased with them. They actually had a lot of CGs, more than most visual novels I've read. They were just plastered everywhere, so good for him. But yeah, I don't have much to say about art. Getting not an artist, except it was good. I enjoyed it. So finally, we have like music and sound, which I am even less keen on. I mean, not keen. Less experienced on, I guess. Especially sound, like I don't know. But for music, you know, the Saya No Uta track list OSTs, it's pretty short. There's only 15 songs, and like 3 of them are for the credits or whatever, so more like 12. So I gave it a listen to before the video, and I think generally the quality is pretty high, especially for I guess it's kind of a short novel, but it didn't really feel like the songs bothered me too much by them repeating, because obviously they repeated them a bunch of times, but it merges well with the story. There's some generally creepy ones, but it was I was fine with them. I think they were mainly average. If I had to give my favorite ones, I'd give Savage, you know. Obviously the fight scene one. I love that. I think I made the correlation in one of the last two videos where it reminds me of like an action movie where like the main guy's just fighting like 10 or 20 bad guys at once, and it's just a crazy fight. Like that's what it means, right? Savage. The song just embodies savagery for me. And there's a train. I'm gonna wait that one out. Pretty annoying, but whatever. But yeah, I love that song. Um, and I also really like Silent Sorrow, which was used in both of the endings. I believe it was used when Saya was dying in the third ending, and then the second ending when Saya was giving birth. It's just a really beautiful song. It's probably better than Savage, honestly. I just love Savage for my own reasons, but I really loved Silent Sorrow. Definitely my MVP song. If I had an instrumental playlist, I'd put it on there, but I don't. Yeah, but whenever I compare songs, I always compare it to the Umineko OST, which probably isn't fair, but yeah, I'd say Silent Sorrow could probably be on that level. Even Savage can fit because they have some corny, or not corny, but some high upbeat songs like that. But yeah, that's my opinion on music, on voice acting. I don't, I don't really care about voice acting in games. I think it was generally fine. The only time I didn't like voice acting was in one visual novel, which was one of the Sachua novels you just read, not for the story. But like one of the characters was really annoying. It just sounded like he was holding his nose while talking. But as long as the voice wasn't too annoying, I'm pretty fine with it. Like an example is I know a lot of people dislike Sakura's voice from Fate Stay Night. I thought it was fine. I don't know why. But I'm pretty open to that kind of stuff. And I was fine with it. I thought that it fit the characters well. Like Fuminori sounded kind of like a psychopath, like he was pretending to be calm and collected, but when he freaks out, it was pretty scary. Sometimes hilarious, like when he was shouting, "Die, die!" when fighting Koji. It was, it sounded more like a shriek. It was great. You know, Saya sounding like a cute innocent girl made sense. Koji kind of sounding manly but good natured. And Yo just sounds super nice, and even Omi sounded really confident, so I thought the voices meshed well. But, ooh, this is good one. I was really impressed over like the songs and the voices were the sound effects. It might be the most impressive sound effects I've heard from my small repertoire of visual novels. Maybe I don't exactly remember all the sound effects from like Umineko and stuff, but just from what I remember, because they were really good. Like just simple sounds like turning off a car or like closing a door. They made them really like sharp, so you can always hear it even though there's music in the background, and it would sometimes lead to like a transition in sound, like maybe a door closing and then the music would just stop after that. Like they were all very like distinct but not overpowering. Like it would blend well within it, which made it super good, like creaky stairs. So I was just super impressed with that. That's definitely a point I'd have to make. Really good sound effects. So yeah, that's all I really have for music and sound. I think a lot of the time and effort in this game went into the art, honestly, with the Fuminori, like all the background scenes and stuff. So obviously, sound probably wasn't their biggest concern, but I thought this OST track was pretty good. Like I don't really have a song I hate. Some of the songs I thought were pretty average, but again, I liked Savage and Silent Sorrow. Thought they were very good. Voices were fine, and sound effects were really good. And holy shit, that was 44 minutes. I wasn't even looking at the time. I guess time flies when you're having fun, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's my discussion. Obviously, if you listen through it, I definitely have a positive opinion on Saya No Uta. I thought it was a very good novel. If I had to place it within the visual novels I've read without looking at what I've read, I'd probably put it third on my list, and it'd bump Fate Stay Night to fourth. And to be honest, Fate was just third because I didn't really have anything that was good enough to be third. But above it would be like The House in Fata Morgana, and then number one Zuminako, which is nothing to be ashamed of, because those are very good. If I had to actually give it a number rating, maybe I'd give it like a 7.5 out of 10. But I hate giving number ratings, but it'd be like a 7.5, with like a 5 being average, 6 being good, 7 being like what, very good or great, and 7.5 would be like very great or something. I really enjoyed it. I don't think there's any actual problems with the story. It's just that such an intense storyline kind of makes it hard to like enjoy yourself. Like there's a couple kind of comedic breaks, but not really. It's just always intense, and it made reading sessions kind of hard, which is why I had a bunch of like 30-minute ones, because my brain can only handle so much, right? But again, that could just be my psyche. I'm sure some people would rate it higher. They just love this kind of stuff. And again, some people might rate it lower because they hate gore, but I'd be surprised if they finish a novel if they hate gore, especially after the first couple of minutes. But yeah, it was all in all a good novel. Short, simple, or not short, but good length. Had a good time reading it. Very fun to record as my first recording, except for the first couple episodes being stuffed. Um, Actually, just some extra notes while I was researching. I found some interesting stuff. So apparently, there's a Russian team kind of made a Saya No Uta like remastered version, where it's like they added a bunch more gameplay or whatever and changed it around, and it has like 12 endings, like a bunch of different character routes, which sounds hilarious, right? It's gonna be it'd be so weird with like, I don't know, maybe like there's a scenario where Omi survives or something. Like it sounds super interesting, but if that ever comes in English, because again it's a Russian thing, um, I'd probably read it just because it sounds fun. So there's that, but something more important than that. While I was looking for a wallpaper, I discovered that apparently Mr. Jen or whatever you said is making a sequel to Saya No Uta in novel form, coming in spring 2019, so in like a month or two. And which is pretty insane, right? So this is an actual official sequel. I haven't read too much up on it, but apparently it's a direct sequel. It's not even like some spin-off thing. Like this is happening after Saya No Uta. I think. I could be wrong, but that's just what I briefly read on, which is weird. Um, I'm trying to picture like what a sequel to Saya No Uta would be, and I can think of a couple of storylines, but they're just not that good. But we'll see. Again, that's being translated in Japanese. So it'd probably be a while for that to be translated, if ever translated. Like it might not ever be, but I'd definitely be interested in reading it just to see how it is. But I'm gonna wrap up the video since this was way longer than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be like 30 minutes, not 50. But TLDR for people skipping ahead. Great novel, great horror novel. Definitely would recommend it to anyone who could stomach the stuff. Wouldn't recommend it to some squeamish person, not person. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'll eventually do more reviews in the future. Like whenever I finish a visual novel, or maybe I'll throw in a review of something that I didn't read, like maybe a manga or whatever. But if you're into reviews or liked it, feel free to subscribe. There's more coming in the future. At least I plan to do some more. And again, if you want to read the Saya No Uta read through, it's on my channel. But yeah, thank you. And if you have any comments or your thoughts on Saya No Uta, feel free to leave it. I'll probably respond eventually. But thank you all for watching. I know this was a long video, and I hope you enjoyed it, or at least found it interesting. Okay.